Today is New Year's Eve day, December the 31st, 2020, and this is a special broadcast posing some questions to think about regarding the COVID-19 and the vaccinations. Now, let me give you a preface before we start. The purpose for this special broadcast is simple in my mind, albeit the subject matter is quite complex and controversial. I also know, since I first wrote this about 7 days ago, the COVID landscape has continued to change with equal uncertainty. You know, when I first started doing these broadcasts several months back, the initial subject matter was on developing critical thinking, meaning analyzing what someone presents to me so I can think for myself with a sense of confidence to discern content rather than filtering that content through another's motivations, biases, or prejudicial reporting. Every person is made in the image of God, which means, like God, every person has the ability to reason, to think, and then make good decisions after gathering the necessary information and making an informed decision. Unless, of course, you give credence to evolution, which means, like the one cell amoeba a person comes from, does not think but only has instinctual responses. I believe this issue that we will talk about today is of such importance that each person who listens to this broadcast should lay down their presuppositions, predispositions, biases, and affiliations and think thoroughly and carefully as to what we know and how we might need to respond under certain case scenarios. I am approaching this broadcast using a question and answer format. Some questions near the end no one can provide medical or scientific information for. Yet they are questions that require personal thought and reflection. An editor note to the listener: as you listen, you might want to note certain ambiguous language used by the experts in response to the consumer's concerns. So here we go. Question number one: what is the rationale for developing the vaccination? According to CDC, quote, stopping a pandemic requires using all the tools available. Vaccines work with your immune system so your body will be ready to fight the virus if you are exposed. Other steps, like wearing masks and social distancing, help reduce your chance of being exposed to the virus or spreading it to others. Together, COVID-19 vaccinations and following CDC's recommendations to protect yourself and others will offer the best protection from COVID-19. Question number two: the concern over the safety of the vaccination has been reported in most major news media. How safe is it according to the experts? Quote, Pfizer has run tests that include more than 44,000 people. An FDA analysis of the vaccine's safety and effectiveness on people aged 16 and older found no specific safety concerns that would preclude the vaccine's use. Question three: after many hours of deliberation by the FDA Advisory Committee regarding the fast-track approval of Pfizer's vaccine, it was reported that two of the committee members were in dissent. The reason for their dissent, as reported by the media, was concern that there was not sufficient data regarding the safety and efficacy of the vaccine for the age bracket of 16 and 17, nor for younger children. Question four: many have asked, what are the side effects? The most common effects found in the Pfizer vaccine trial included pain, redness or swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, chills, muscle pain, and joint pain, according to the Food and Drug Administration analysis that was released. Some who consented to be interviewed by the media reported the same symptoms. However, adverse effects from the vaccination were evident with people who had allergies. An additional precaution was to have the patient wait in a designated area for 20 to 30 minutes, which the experts believe would be the time frame when symptoms would appear. Just recently, a severe reaction to the vaccination in Alaska required the patient to be hospitalized and her system purged from the vaccination, and she had no allergies. Question 5. We often hear along the lines of the last question to see if a person is allergic to the ingredients of the vaccination. So what are the ingredients that are used to formulate this vaccination? Amanda Cohen, an official with the CDC's COVID-19 vaccination planning unit, said the vaccine consists of messenger RNA and 4 lipid nanoparticles, and that there are no preservatives or other ingredients in the vaccination. I guess my response to her is even then one's physician would need to know what the 4 lipid nanoparticles are and test the patient for any interactions. Question 6. A continuing conversation is the safety of the vaccination in light of its rapid development. Are they harmful or dangerous? According to Dr. Eileen Marty was interviewed and stated that the development and testing periods for vaccinations generally take far longer than the speed-up process for the coronavirus shots. Marty, an infectious disease expert at Florida International University, explained that the 2-month observation period of people who took the COVID-19 vaccination in clinical trials is a time period in which side effects would normally present themselves for a vaccination. In a complete response, he said, the study is a 2-month study of the numbers of people who have received 2 doses and had gone beyond their 7 days post-vaccination. And that's where the comparison was. Whereas that could be something that we would worry about, the reality is that when we see side effects from vaccinations, we generally see anything significant within the first 2 months. So it's not that it isn't possible, and it is absolutely imperative that we go on and study this beyond those 2 months for every single one of the vaccines that's being looked at. But within those 2 months is when we generally see anything of significance, and rarely do we find anything of significance after 2 months for side effects. Question 7, another question raised is how long will the vaccine last? How long a vaccine lasts depends on the actual vaccine itself. The goal of a vaccine is to have as long of an immunity as possible, explained infectious disease specialist Dr. Linda Nabha. What vaccines are designed to do, she said, is to create these antibodies. When you get a vaccine, your body sees a foreign particle and it reacts. It makes antibodies. And what you really want is the body to keep those antibodies for as long as possible, she said. So what's the range for how long vaccinations typically last? She said it could be anywhere from a couple of months to a lifetime. Question 8, after being vaccinated, can a person still contract COVID? Here is the expert's response. It also is not yet known whether Pfizer or Moderna vaccines protect people from infection entirely or just from symptoms. That means vaccinated people might still be able to get infected and pass the virus on, although it would be likely to be at a much lower rate. Question 9, will there be a booster vaccination like the flu? For people receiving the first wave of COVID-19 vaccinations, the process will not be over with one shot. Both Pfizer and Moderna vaccines require 2 doses. As is true with many multi-dose immunizations, the first dose of these vaccines will help prime the immune system to create a response. Subsequent shots will help boost that immune system. Question 10, CDC says they want to make it available to any who wants to be vaccinated. 61% of Americans are willing to get vaccinated. Now, remember, I wrote this 7 days ago. This is significantly higher than first reported. Would you be willing to take the vaccination? If so, what gives you confidence to do so? If not, what reservations do you have and why? This is the question that I am posing and that I need to answer. Number 11, if the government issues a law or state mandate that you have to be vaccinated, will you comply? As December started, a member of the New York State Assembly proposed a bill to require COVID-19 vaccinations for all residents who are able to safely receive it. In November, the New York State Bar Association recommended the state consider making it mandatory for all residents to get the shot, except those exempt by doctors. In August, Australia's Prime Minister suggested the vaccination would be mandatory in his country, but later backtracked on those comments. That same month in Virginia, the health commissioner said he planned on mandating the vaccine, but a spokeswoman for the state's governor later said there were no plans to do so, as the local media reported. A key member of the White House Corona Task Force assured it won't happen. Dr. Anthony Fauci said he would definitely not support a nationwide mandate of the COVID-19 vaccine. It's a different story for orders issued by states, cities, or businesses, but even then, mandatory vaccinations would be forced vaccinations. Refusing to follow a mandate could mean a fine, a tax, or other penalty, according to Reese, who studied legal and policy issues related to vaccines. But the federal government has some ways to get people to vaccinate, imposing it as a condition of getting a passport, for example. States have authority to regulate public health, and they have in the past mandated vaccines. The classic case in this area of law, Jacobson versus Massachusetts in 1905, was decided by the Supreme Court after a smallpox outbreak. Cities have power too. In 2019, New York City has required people living in 4 zip codes in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, to get the measles vaccination, prove they already had it, or face a $1,000 fine. But any vaccine mandates must be reasonable, proportional, and enforced in a non-discriminatory fashion, according to Reese. She expected COVID-19 hotspots would make the vaccine a requirement for its residents. Number 12, can vaccinations be compulsory for certain groups of people? Yes, health workers are the classic example. Hospitals often require some staff to get a flu or hepatitis B vaccine. Universities may mandate students, faculty, and staff to be immunized for certain diseases before coming on campus. Schools may have the same requirements for children. 13, if your company requires you to get the vaccination, would you? What if your employment is not a frontline or essential worker? What if they threaten you with termination? An employee can require a person to get vaccinated or be terminated under certain conditions. However, these conditions are not clearly stated. Number 14, can airlines, restaurants, stores, stadiums make the vaccine a condition to provide services or to do business? Yes, they can, provided they do not violate the anti-discrimination laws. Number 15, how much stock should someone place in the seeming endless reports of the vaccinations changing one's DNA or alleged statements by Bill Gates? It is unfortunate that a social media outlet attempts to provide health information or disinformation. There are posts circulating that the vaccine is a means of sterilization and the vaccine will alter a person's DNA. Please get your health information from the multiple experts in the field of health and science. If this vaccination's a trial run to monitor citizens like the mark of the beast after the church is raptured, if vaccination becomes a legal requirement for travel or doing business, and you must produce some valid certification you were vaccinated, then it parallels the mark of the beast in Revelation. Having said that, the proper understanding of eschatology is such an event of human marking by the beast cannot take place until after the church of Jesus Christ is removed from the sin-sick, enslaved cosmos. 17. What if a vaccination is required by airlines to travel, or state borders? Or you will be issued a card showing you have been vaccinated as proof for daily movement or purchase. As mentioned above, this may be a possibility. I remember hearing a news report about the citizens in France. There was a total lockdown and you had to have a card showing you had permission to be out. You were stopped by police and asked to produce such a card. Now, I have attempted to investigate and research responses to these common questions, or at least to provoke the listener to pursue your own inquiry into these questions. I close with the following verse from the Bible. 1 Chronicles 12:32. Of the sons of Issachar, men who understood the times with knowledge of what Israel should do. The context is the various tribes coming together to turn the kingdom of Saul to David. Verse 23. Each tribe is listed. Only verse 32 provides a description of the tribe of Issachar. These men understood the times. They were aware of their surroundings and circumstances and events. It also says because they understood what was happening, they possessed knowledge of how to respond and what to do. Thus, my hope for each listener is to be a person of understanding of these challenging times. And because you understand, you will have the knowledge on how to respond. I trust that this has been somewhat helpful. I know in many circles this is a controversial issue. But the bottom line for the believer is 1 Chronicles. We need to be men and women who understand the times so we know how to respond. Thank you for listening.